Hi there. This presentation is going to focus on the concept of external sociocultural stratification, and it builds on two other presentations studying population structure. And there we looked at the differentiation type and the internal stratification type. So when we are talking about external stratification, we're really talking about cross-national comparisons. Here's an example of 50 nations ranked according to GDP in 2010 US dollars, and we can see here quite a range from poor to wealthy. And GDP, if you were to look at it as a graph of the world, is quite skewed, with a few very wealthy and rich countries and a great number of poor countries and a slightly higher number of middle-income countries, all in a very skewed distribution. And if we look at these groups, these 10 groups here, randomly generated groups, we can see a range of GDPs that goes from the millions through the trillions. Of course, the poorest countries measure their GDP in millions, and the wealthiest in terms of trillions. Scholars have created a coefficient called the Gini coefficient, which is a measure of inequality within populations, which would allow us to make cross-national comparisons where we can see how much internal inequality there is relative to other countries. So the Gini coefficient of the world is 0.71, and since 1 is inequality, perfect inequality, and 0 is perfect equality, you can see that most nations are internally quite unequal, and that can be used to measure inequality in terms of income or wealth. You can see that graphically here. This is the Lorenz curve, cumulative share of people from lowest to highest incomes relative to cumulative share of income earned. That's how we get to the Gini coefficient. And if it's a 45-degree angle, then it's perfect equality. And if it's a 90-degree angle, then it's perfect inequality. So the Lorenz curve is actually where we find usually where most nations fall in between those extremes. If we go to the CIA World Factbook, we can actually find a ranking of countries in terms of their Gini coefficients. And what's interesting, something we might observe if we look at this list, first of all, the data are from different time points because these data are not always routinely collected. But at the top of the list, the most unequal countries also tend to be some of the poorest countries, which is perhaps surprising. Now, not all poor countries are as unequal, so it's not a perfect relationship, but if we look at the top of the list, we notice Lesotho is not exactly the wealthiest country in the world. It's one of the poorest. Central African Republic. South Africa is actually more of a middle-income country, but Micronesia, Haiti is a very poor country. Botswana, Namibia, Zambia are unequal. Now, Hong Kong is a wealthier city-state, but also has a high level of inequality. It could also be related to urbanization. Then we get to some Latin American countries down here. When we get to the 10 through 14, we have Colombia, Guatemala, Paraguay, and Panama. Papua New Guinea is in the mix in there too, from Oceania. And so forth. We still find a number of African countries as we continue our way down the list, with the occasional Latin American country. There's an Asian country, Sri Lanka. But that's the general pattern regionally in terms of continents. So this is something you can continue to explore on your own. Just want to take a quick look at external stratification. Thanks for watching.